Welcome to One for the Road. I'm Devvy Kid and your commentator. One for the Road was developed and created to help the busy commuter and Americans who don't have access to the internet find out what Congress and the media won't tell you. This next segment is called States Must Force 17th Amendment Showdown. This is another one of my columns from February of 2005. Let me quote President Andrew Jackson. "Take time to deliberate, but when the time for action arrives, stop thinking and go in," unquote. The courage and wisdom of those who birthed this republic was nothing short of a magnificent event in the history of the world. When creating the federal government, it was imperative that the colonies, later called states, and the people were represented fairly. The method decided upon was the people would vote for their voice, a representative to serve in the House of Representatives. The states of the Union would each have an equal number of U.S. senators, fixed at 2, appointed by their state legislature to represent the interests of the state. And this was very, very important. And I have been to the National Archives. I have spent a lot of time in Washington, D.C. going over old historical documents. And I can tell you that this was very, very important to the legislators at the time who created and birthed the Constitution and the national government. Should that U.S. senator fail in their job, the legislature, having appointed them, would then have the option to recall them back to their state and appoint a new one. The decision to have the states appoint their U.S. senators was very calculated. All of that changed with the fraudulent ratification of the 17th Amendment. U.S. senators would now be elected. The states lost their suffrage rights. They no longer had any representation in Washington, D.C., and the federal machine has walked over them since. This issue is one of the most important problems facing this nation today, yet few people know anything about it. Last summer, I prepared, and this is a link, I prepared a working paper for Representative Henry McElroy of the New Hampshire State Legislature on the history of this amendment and why it is imperative the states step forward and force a constitutional showdown. For those who might knee-jerk this would cause constitutional chaos, I can't highly recommend enough Judge Andrew Napolitano's excellent book titled Constitutional Chaos. Ladies and gentlemen, we already are in constitutional chaos, and the situation will only continue to deteriorate without immediate action. The 17th Amendment was never properly ratified. I have seen the proof with my own eyes at the National Archives and from the documents obtained by Bill Benson from all 48 state legislatures who voted at the time of this alleged ratification. In Mr. Benson's fabulous research book, Proof the 17th Amendment Was Not Ratified, you too can see all of the documents. I also collected court-certified documents on this from the bowels of the California State Archives. They are incontrovertible and prove without question that Secretary of State William Jennings Bryan on May 31st, 1913, knowingly and willfully issued a memo declaring the 17th Amendment ratified, even though he knew at the time the required number of states did not ratify it. There is no question. The courts, including the United States Supreme Court, link, have been very specific on the rigid requirements for ratification. There can be no mistake that fraud was committed by Bryan and that every U.S. senator since 1913 sits in office under a law that simply does not exist. This is critical. U.S. senators ratify treaties. They confirm federal judges, U.S. Supreme Court justices, and hold impeachment trials. Legally, our participation in the United Nations, every destructive trade treaty, including NAFTA, GATT, Roe v. Wade, and other legislative acts committed by U.S. senators these past 92 years, legally and technically are invalid. The courts refuse to touch this issue because they don't have the backbone. While several states have introduced resolutions to nix the 17th Amendment, introduced by patriotic representatives and killed by Republicans in every instance, realistically, there's no question this current crop of Congress will never do the right thing. Therefore, it is up to the people and the states of the Union. The people must get the proof and begin a systematic assault, nonviolent of course, on their state legislatures to appoint 2 U.S. senators to represent them and send them to Washington, D.C. This will force the issue into a court of law where it should have gone decades ago. It is wrong to allow this fraud to continue, regardless of what political party you belong to. Please feel free to use the working paper I have prepared for Representative McElroy for your state rep and senator. They will soon realize that it is to their utmost advantage to press this issue, and for the sake of our republic, this challenge must be made to restore the balance between the states and the people. America is not a democracy of mob rule, but that's exactly what has happened with the election of U.S. senators. This separation between powers must go back to the state legislatures. Without question, this is a Herculean task, but it can be done. If you know your state representative or state senator will play politics and continue to ignore this fraud, then run for their seat in 2006. We only need one state legislature to find the courage to stand up to this lie and make their movement. Make a commitment to oust any state legislator or senator who refuses to undertake this fight. We must replace these bad employees with ones who will get the job done. The destiny of this republic lies in the hands of we the people. There are millions of active Americans in 28,000 citizens groups. It's time to focus on specific issues killing our beloved nation. For example, besides the 17th Amendment, invasion by illegals, unconstitutional cabinets, unconstitutional spending. Get organized and throw out the same old career politicians at every level of government and help get true constitutionalists elected who will have the guts to get this republic back on course. I leave you by asking you this: are we a nation of laws or lies? We cannot be both and survive.